Good evening, Bermuda, and welcome to our final by-election event for Constituency 36. My name is Ajay Peets, and I'll be moderating this evening. I would like to thank you for choosing to join us on Burn News for your C36 by-election coverage. Tonight, I am joined by Michael Miners, Dwayne Robinson, and Shamari Tolbert-Woolridge, who will share their thoughts on this by-election and the state of politics in Bermuda as we await election results. Throughout the night, I'll provide updates on the vote count, and later we'll be joined by a number of other young leaders, so make sure to stay tuned. To get started, panelists, please introduce yourself and your background. I'd like to start off with Macau first.
Thank you for having me. My name is Michael Manas. I am the founder and CEO of Better Digital Solutions. Essentially, we do AI and software solutions for medium to large businesses to help them automate and optimize, save money, save time, all the good stuff. While I don't actually represent any party, I don't even fully endorse any movement, starting a business did show me what it means to stand up and say, I want to serve my community with or without the support of a group. And the community might decide I am not worthy. So just for that, any independent gets my sympathy, gets my empathy. And hopefully I can be a critical voice in their corner tonight, share my perspective.
Thank you so much for joining us, and I'd like to pass the baton over to Dwayne Robinson.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. I've got a makeshift setup here, so let's keep our fingers crossed. I am the One Bermuda Alliance senator in the opposition, and I'm also the candidate for Constituency 30. And I've also been deputy chair for the party. In my private life, I have often been a producer and a background in hospitality. And I am currently at the a law firm doing immigration. So that's my current background. I've been involved in politics for almost, I want to say almost a decade now, although I'm young. I am, been around the block a few times. So I'm really happy to be a part of these sort of conversations. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And now, Shamari, can you please introduce yourself?
Well, good evening to you, Ajay, and my fellow panelists, Mr. Marnus, Mr. Robinson, and to the people of Bermuda, of course. My name is Shamari Tolbert Ward. I'm the chairman of the Progressive Labour Party's Youth Wing, Progressive Minds. We're all about trying to bring young people into the fray, into the political system, and making them aware of their voice and their vote and how they could be engaged in the political process. Of course, we want to start with a more progressive and a more labor-minded ideology. So that's who I am, and I'm a member of the BIU, someone who believes in labor rights and human rights, and that's what we fight for in Progressive Minds.
I'd like to thank all of you again for joining us tonight. Now, just a little debrief on this by-election. The Sandys North by-election is the second by-election this year, but this time it will be the first time for all the residents in Constituency 36 who have the choice of 4 candidates. Running in C36 are Dr. Emily Gail Dill for the PLP, Mr. Carl Neblett for the OBA, the Honorable Mark Bing for the FDM, and Lieutenant Cyree Bean as an independent. Since the one-party seat system in 2003, the PLP has held the seat in C36 for all 5 general elections. In 2020, PLP's Kathy Lightbourne Simmons, whose resignation prompted this by election, won the seat with 59.04% of the vote. The FDM's Mark Bean placed second with 25.34% of the vote, and the OBA's Jeff Souza finished in third with 15.62% of the vote. So, with all of this, I would like to start our discussion. So, with that information in hand, do you think the results of this election will follow a similar trend? And I'd like to hand this off to Dwayne first.
Right. Thank you. So I believe right now what we're seeing is, public sentiment versus voter history, right? So we have a full horse race, which is pretty unprecedented. But it also, in our Westminster system, allows for a bit of an upset because if there is a low turnout, as there usually is in by elections, a person could be elected on 100 to 150 votes. So I do believe that, you know, we have to weigh in whether or not folks will continue to vote traditionally, and whether or not the Progressive Labor Party, who is the incumbent party defending that seat, will be able to get their voters to come out and support their candidate. Because if not, a low voter turnout does favor the opposition parties because of that division and split in votes. So it'll be very interesting to see how that pans out. There's a lot of pressure points and pain points in this constituency that all parties have really spoken to throughout their campaign. And I will be interested to see how some primary plays in to that, because I know that that has been a huge pain point for the community, and also how they feel, because there has been a sentiment that they haven't been as represented as they would like. And with all new faces, minus the FDM's Mark Bean, it really gives it a toss up as to whether or not that traditional base will stick around, or whether or not they'll stay home, and each individual party is able to kind of skate by on a smaller vote margin than a general election.
Right. Now, Shamari, how would you like to respond to this, especially with the context of C36 being a PLP stronghold
Mhm.
within the last 5 elections?
Well, I completely agree with Mr. Robinson's point. This is a if voter turnout is low, it favors the Progressive Labor Party if they can excite their base and get them to the polls. Now, with the independent, he's a young man coming into politics. Voters may want a fresh face. May want to take a risk with a younger candidate, a candidate that may bring something really different um, to the country and our political process. But I think that Mr. Robinson's right. A lot of voter turnout is what a lot of people have been observing. It may favor the PLP. It may favor the incumbents. Now, what's really going to be interesting is who comes in second as well, because I'm pretty sure the OBA wants to keep on their momentum from the previous by-election, and I'm pretty sure that the FDM, they are going to be, well, first and foremost, they have their leader out there. So he is expected to have a great performance as the leader of the political party. So if the PLP can get out their base, it's going to be good for them. But if they can't, that person who is vying for that second place could catch them up. And that may be Mr. Bean or maybe Mr. Cyree Bean. So that's going to be very interesting. I don't know how the people of Smith Sanders North are feeling right now. I'm not 100% engaged with the constituency, but it's going to be very interesting who comes in first and second, and if the OBA could continue on the momentum from the CTN by-election.
Right. Now, Mikhail, you mentioned before in your introduction that you sympathize for independent candidates. Now, how do you think the independent candidate Cyree Bean will fare in this election?
I'm not one for public bets, but if we're talking about pure speculation, I would say, based on the rumblings about dissatisfaction with party politics, based on the work that I've heard him doing in his campaign and his canvassing, and based on the strategic endorsements that he's been able to get for himself, it is highly unlikely that he'll be at the bottom of the bracket. It's also highly unlikely that he would do much worse than Sir John Swan. but just speculation.
All right. Thank you. Now, in your opinion, what makes a strong candidate? And do you see any of these qualities among the candidates within this by-election? And I would like to hand this over first to Shamari.
Well, well, Ajay, I think that it depends what the people of Bermuda are feeling. Elections are about vibes. Where's the vibe in the country right now? That's what people are looking at, and I think it's a very mixed bag right now. I think that some people are looking for a change candidate. Some people are looking for a candidate who's going to make promises and want to go up there and really change things. And other people think that we're trucking along pretty good. So it's up to the voter. It's up to the voter. Do they want to? Do they view this by-election as a change by-election, or do they view this by-election as we're going to keep on going with what we have and we're going to, you know, let the status quo continue?
And Dwayne, as a candidate yourself, what do you believe makes a strong candidate? And do you see these qualities among the candidates in the by-election?
I believe a strong candidate really is somebody who is available, somebody that is able to represent the people's interests. But I think one of the key things that we tend to gloss over in campaigns is how well do the candidates know, legislative process and government process. Because it's one thing to be likable, it's one thing to be, out and about in the community. But if you can't represent them in the House of Assembly, if you can't really orate or, process legislation, then I think to me, that is the part that they really are electing you for, which is to get up there and really advocate on their behalf. I do believe that the people of C36 have seen that. Carl Nebelit is relatively new, but he's been earnest in his experience and learning. And I think Sairi, the independent candidate, has also really put himself forward as somebody who's willing to learn. Obviously, with the FDM, I believe in this case they have a very experienced, former opposition leader, former party leader. In the Honorable Mark Bean, who obviously is somebody who would be considered a veteran and able to really get right into the process. But I think that each of them bring a relatively great part of the candidacy package, with the Dr. Reverend Emily Gale being, in the community as somebody who is a pastor. They know each and every one of these candidates, with Carl Nablet being, a police officer in security and being a part of that community for 30 years. So I think that they each present a variation of a strong candidate. And I believe that it's going to come down to who has really connected with the people the most and which party they feel is the party that's fit to govern. Because I believe that Bermudians want change. So they're not necessarily looking to elect candidates who stand on their own, but candidates who are part of a team of people who have a plan, who are prepared to, change the trajectory of the island.
Right. So just shifting gears a little bit, Mikkel, how would you describe the state of politics in Bermuda today?
To get colorful, I would say it's a lot like a burning car plowing into traffic. At the end of the day, somebody's got to jump in the car and stop it. People are going to get hurt. You're going to get hurt in the process, and you're probably not going to get thanked. But somebody has to stop the car. Now, cost of living doesn't justify the quality of life that we have. And I'm not a politician, I'm not an expert, so I won't say that it's something we can place on any individual party. Realistically, there are processes, there are systems that I don't understand, but I do know what we feel, and I do know I'm not the only one that feels it.
Trust me, I feel it too. And Shamari, how would you like to respond to that?
I think that a lot of the issues that are facing in this country are not issues that we face alone. We live in a global community. When I was young, they used to say, when America sneezes, Bermuda catches a cold. And that's happening all around the world. The cost of living is going up. We're seeing inflation that has hit countries around the world. And then look, we had a strike that was of course, it was they reached an agreement with the strike, but that would have seriously impacted Bermuda. And I think that people forget how small and sometimes seems insignificant Bermuda is in the global context, and how we, a lot of the time, look at our economy. Our economy is someone that is tourism and international business. So we're at the whims of the international community so much of the time. And Bermudians think, okay, we can just wave a magic wand and get everything done at times. And yes, we can do a much better job in many aspects. But we have to remember our position and try to use our position, our unique position in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean to leverage for a better quality of life for our people. And we can do that. I think that politics in Bermuda right now, Bermudians are always going to they're always going to blame, or voters will always blame anytime something goes wrong with the people in power, no matter if it's directly because of the legislation they put or not. So I think that the world is in a position of uncertainty, and the whole world is in a going through growing pains as we navigate the 21st century.
All right. Now, Dwayne, what key issues do you feel have been underrepresented in this by-election? And why do you think those issues haven't gained any more attention?
Underrepresented. I believe that the discourse around the school closures has not been as emphasized, and I believe that's because it's part of a wider education reform. I know that the particular campaigns have focused on crime, focused on cost of living, the economic situation, and change. I did note that a lot of candidates on the doorstep, a lot of constituents on the doorstep have mentioned the roads and safety on the roads and the maintenance of our infrastructure, which I don't believe that has been a forefront of the conversation either. And that's most likely because Bermudians are tired of talking about the state of the roads and the state of the infrastructure and the fact that trees aren't cut back. Folks feel unsafe with the amount of traffic passing through Somerset. So I think that those will be the things that I find to be underrepresented. Most likely the path to healthcare as well, universal health coverage. A lot of Bermudians, a lot of the constituents island wide battling with the cost of health insurance and healthcare. So these are some things that I think haven't been as highlighted as they could be, but I know that they are part of the wider island wide conversation. So I'm sure that it has been conversed on the doorstep, but it would be something that I feel like for this particular constituency would be highlighted more.
Definitely. And Mikhail, how would you respond to that? What issues do you think are underrepresented, especially in this by-election?
I don't think I would take a straightforward approach to the question because while I do recognize there are issues that I have, things that I think should be spoken about more, I also recognize that we don't have any real data to make that assessment off of. It's just guessing and vibes. The reality is, issues may be being raised proportionately to how many people really complain about it. And at the same time, these are issues that aren't new. They're issues that people are probably tired talking about. So I'm torn and I'm not a professional in this arena, so I'll decline to give a strong answer.
All right. Now, especially since the last election, there has been a lot of discourse around calling for a national debate, especially during the general election. Do you support calls for election debates? And I'd like to give this question first to Shamari.
100%. I think that first and foremost, I think I want to commend you all for having the panel discussion between the candidates in this election. We are at a point where politics in Bermuda is changing. We want to see our political political figures and candidates and people who are vying for political power to be able to sit on a stage or sit on a stand on a stage or come on a platform like this in a Zoom or YouTube um, medium and debate their ideas to the Bermudian people. We all have ideas. We all have visions of where we think the country should go. And if we really believe those things, we should be going up against people who may not agree with us and testing our ideas and testing our theories and putting it right to the Bermudian people. Look, you go to any country in the world, United States, the United Kingdom, they have public debates. They have debates where, I mean, the United Kingdom in their election, they have well seven debate. They have so much debates, it's not even funny. We should be having public debates. We should be able to present these ideas to the Bermudian people, and most importantly, it is just the optics of having three different people from three different entities, or four different people from four different political entities sitting on a stage, debating ideas, shaking hands afterwards, and committed to each other that at the end of the day we're still going to do what we have to do to improve the lives of the Bermudian people.
I 100% agree with you. And now, Mikkel, from a voter's standpoint, if there was a national debate amongst um, our leaders and also the candidates, do you think that would help you as a voter to make an informed decision? Do you think something like that would be useful for you as a voter?
Yeah, absolutely. The closest frame of reference for me is business. If there's a job that we're trying to fill the role of, and that role is highly contentious, there's going to be a lot of conflict. I need to see how that person interacts in that space, especially like Shamari said, your ideas need to stand up to criticism. So if I can't assess how you actually operate in that space, I'm just guessing.
Definitely. Now, Dwayne, you're a candidate yourself. So if there was a call for a debate, would you be prepared to participate?
Absolutely. I believe that national debates and debates of any kind really give people the notion that we can disagree professionally. I find that politics has become quite polarizing in Bermuda, where people find that the ideologies create actual divisions within our community. I believe it would be wise and prudent for us as folks who want to be elected and folks who wish to lead the country uh, to have those debates and show people that, yes, we may have ideologies that are different, but at the end of the day, we're all Team Bermuda, right? And I think that if we allow the polarizing of the community where we're seeing such divisions, I think that it's part of the reason why, Bermuda hasn't moved as far as it should, because, a party gets elected and half of the, or a third of the population feel disenfranchised because they are so entrenched. Neither party can really govern a divided Bermuda. So as politicians, as leaders, it's good for us to foster unity amongst our people. Yes, we disagree, but as Shamari said, shake hands afterwards and let's get to work and root for the government to succeed. And I feel like as a member of the opposition, we are tasked with, pointing out the flaws and pressuring government, but not tasked with hoping that they fail. We root for them because we all live here. We're raising our children here. So I believe a national debate would be a great way to show that cohesiveness and allow people to get a feel of our leaders, of our candidates, where they stand, and what they represent on an individual level that plays into the wider party level.
Definitely. And I think that there is a support amongst our community for something like this to be facilitated. So hopefully, maybe in the next election, that could be facilitated. And since both of you were at the polling station, Shamari, if you could just quickly speak to what was the atmosphere like at the polling station during your time there?
I would did spend a whole lot of time there. I got scared off by the rain, but it was a good turnout. I saw some people haven't seen for a while, so it looked like it was commendable spirit between everyone. It just seemed like everybody was really standing around and just waiting for people to come in. Of course, the candidates were doing their job, greeting people as they came in. I think it was a good situation. And when I came in, I greeted everyone, no matter what political party they represented. Said good evening, like every Bermudian does when they walk into a room. And I think it was hopefully more people came after I left, and we have a good turnout, and the people have Sanders North are able to have a representative that has the best representative for them, and hopefully that's Miss Dr. Emily Gale.
That's amazing to hear. And Dwayne, was the same energy there for you as the same for Shamari?
I showed up right near the end. I had to get there from work, but it was definitely like a scene where you saw all the political parties kind of huddled in the rain, and I think it's a symbol of, you know, everybody is really kind of dedicated to this election, and I think we've seen kind of that determination and visibility from all the parties, and I think all of us within the community would love to see that continue in every constituency if we could. But I think that the vibe was very good. The tents are very close, so if you didn't want to interact, you still got to interact, right? And I think that it's good that we show people when they come in that we don't need to be miles apart, you know, that we can stand next to each other and have a joke, have a laugh, have a handshake. So I didn't get to greet too many people, but because it was pouring when I showed up. But usually during the last two by-elections, you know, most people are circulating, and I think that that's a good thing. I believe the turnout was relatively low, so I believe it was a steady, uh, stream of voters. So hopefully, we see a larger turnout in the general election, because for our democracy, you know, you want the candidate to win with a resounding majority, so that you know they have that mandate of that constituency. Obviously, me personally, I'm rooting for Mr. Carl Neblett, but I wish all the candidates luck, and to maintain that sort of camaraderie going into the general election.
So we're coming up on that final half hour, and I would like to give each of you at least a minute opportunity to express anything that you would like to say to our viewers in regards to the by-election, any sentiments that you share regarding the state of politics from your youth perspective. And I'd like to hand it over to Michael first.
Well, thank you. Um, there are two big things that I would say to anybody listening. One is it's tempting to look for government to save all of us, but at the same time, we need to be proactive. The more businesses that can be set up that are export based, that bring money into our shores, the better. And also, even though I don't fully endorse anybody, I do say that if we're looking at somebody we can hold accountable, I feel good knowing that if I did vote for Cyree, I'm voting for Cyree, and what he believes is what I support. That feels very genuine to me.
And I would like to hand it off to you, Shamari.
Well, I'll just say that democracy requires participation. It requires everybody to come in and come together and vote, and not just vote, but ensure that they're doing things, whether it's in the community club, whether it's in a political party, whether it's in your parish council, that you can make a difference if we all just donate in our time and our effort to make our country better. Don't have to be in a political party, but we all play a part to make this Bermuda. We don't live on an island. We live on an archipelago, which is a group of islands that makes this beautiful home that we have. And if we all do our part to make this beautiful home that we have continue to stay beautiful and vibrant and successful and flourishing, we all have to participate and show our interest and show our love for our country and our fellow Bermudians.
And Dwayne, I have about 30 seconds for you. I'm so sorry, but your
That's
final
okay.
thoughts.
Just really quickly, I'd like to remind the viewers and everybody that your vote is your vote, right? Uh, I I understand that we all have historical preferences or familial ties or whatever, but it is very crucial that the electorate realize that that vote that you cast is yours. And any traditional or anybody that tells you how you should vote, I encourage you to do your own research, reach out to your candidate, because I know a lot of people like to say, well, we never see him, or he never came to my door. But I think it's a two-way street that we need to remember as folks. We need to also be reaching out to our representatives to make sure that we are connecting, that they represent what we are looking for. So I want to just put a proactive tip on both sides. Yes, the candidates must make themselves available to represent the community, but I also want the community to retake its power back. You are not helpless in this system. And the more we do to educate ourselves and to check on our candidates and our representatives and our leaders, the better our democracy will be.
Thank you. And I would like to thank all of our panelists for your thoughts and for joining us this evening. We're going to take a quick break and check in on the polling site. When we return, I'll be joined by a new set of guests to continue the conversation.
Test, test, test.
My apologies. Good evening, Bermuda, and welcome back. I am so excited to continue tonight's panel. I have some new guests, and I would like to introduce them. So tonight we have Christian Chin Goret, Taj Dunville Otterbridge, Malachi Simons, and Asia Stovall. I would like to give you guys the floor to introduce yourselves. And first, I would like to start off with Asia.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and my fellow panelists. My name is Asia Stovall, and I am the secretary of the Progressive Minds, the Progressive Labour Party's youth wing.
And then I would like to pass it on to Christian Chingaret.
Hello, good evening. My name's Christian, and I work with communities with Communities Love.
And Taj.
Hello, everyone. I am a political commentator of sorts and an activist, and I'm currently studying a Master of Public Administration at the London School of Economics and Political Science.
And Malachi.
Good evening, everyone. I am a agricultural engineer. I am the owner of Just a Farmer, and I'm currently the candidate for the OBA and C15.
Thank you so much for joining us. So just to get straight into it, so just tagging along from the last panel, do you think that the results of this election will reflect the outcomes of the general election? And I would like to hand this off to Taj first.
I think no, because in general, by-elections are not a good predictor for an election because one, voter turnout tends to be lower. You have different voter bases that can be activated during by-elections and in a general election. And in a general election, general elections can tend to favor a governing party, whereas by-elections can tend to favor opposition parties. So by-elections are in general a bad predictor of the upcoming general. So I don't think this would be a good predictor, but I do think it would give some insight to the parties on how the voter base is feeling about each party and kind of the policy stances and the candidates as well.
Thank you for your input. And Malachi, how would you like to respond to that? How do you think the results of this election will reflect the outcomes of the general election?
I agree with Taj, and I also have my own point of view. I think it definitely will reflect a little bit of the general election because we've never had, well, from my point of view, I'm only 30. We've never had a four-person race, you know. I think it's going to give us an insight on what is to come to an extent, not fully, because like the panelists before me said, you have a lower turnout, which is completely true. I think, you know, we've seen that it has been a lower turnout. So, you know, I think we're going to feel a little bit of both sides there. You know, I think we're going to get an idea because it's a four-person race, the first time I think it's ever happened, a four-person race. And we're also going to be on the other end, seeing that it's lower turnout. So it's kind of iffy, you know, it's still 50-50 in my mind.
All right. Now, Asia, as a member of Progressive Minds, do you think that your party has made enough effort to attract and engage young people?
Yes, I do. We do have our bi-weekly meetings that we have to engage with the younger community. We are out there more than we were before. So I do think that we have done a lot to get the younger generation out there as well, and also to vote.
Thank you. And just to reshift the question a bit for you, Christian, as a young person yourself, do you feel engaged with each of the political parties?
Well, not being from the constituency, I don't see it as much because that's why I'm in the by-election. But going on the point of a general election coming up, I think this will set the pace for people who are outside of that election specifically to give a sort of precedent of what to expect from the parties going forward with the future elections. You know?
Now, there's been a lot of talk about representation, and in a country as small as Bermuda, what does or should constituency representation look like? And I'd like to hand this off to Malachi first.
Um, Constituency representation. I think that in a small place like Bermuda with so many different points of views, because we've come well, we have the Bermudian point of view, and then we have people that go away to school and they got a different point of view and a different exposure. I think constituency representation, in my mind, should come from a group, so it's not just one person representing one constituency. It should be, you hear everybody in that constituency, because you're going to have the older generation, you're going to have the younger generation, you're going to have the in-between generation, and I think everybody's voice needs to be heard. So I think it's finding that balance between everybody and how you reach them. Everybody's different. Everybody gets their information differently and gives their information differently. So you have to figure out a way to reach everybody and receive and listen to everybody.
Right. Now, how would you like to respond to that, Taj? What do you think representation from like a constituency standpoint, how should that look in your opinion?
I think it should be purely about stakeholder engagement, both from the candidate and from the branch support, so the branch chairs, respective of parties. The independent may have a team as well from that constituency. So it looks like those people engaging with the community on a constant basis, which is unfortunately not what we see in Westminster-style governments. You don't see that because candidates do not have the opportunity to represent their constituents. They are forced to vote on a party line. Let's not be mistaken about that. So they have, and oftentimes candidates can be forced to vote against the wishes of their constituents based on the overall aim of the party. So I think that is a major drawback to party representation of a constituency. So I think that is where independent candidates could be useful, because the only thing they are representing is their constituency and not the views, platform of an established party, which may differ from that of their individual constituency.
Now, Tosh, you bring up a phenomenal point, especially in regards to the independent movement, and it swings very well into my next question. So, with this independent movement, it's been supported very well by the community, and it seems like it's a much needed shift for within our politics. Do you agree, Christian?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that because for the fact, first off, we are well represented per person per Bermuda, and I think it's difficult because often we sort of cohort into groups to make it easier for ourselves. But the fact is, you're having people supporting independence a bit more and creating a sort of framework around that to encourage them. Because let's say where the fact Sir John Swan sort of helping create that structure for other people, I think it's very encouraging. Along with Taj saying about party lines, we did have the last time I was on with you and Taj, and how the questions you were asked, some of the answers weren't exactly clear cut because they had to represent not just themselves but other people, and they had to check themselves, and it's very difficult to get someone's true opinion if they're often having to go back. Oh, let me go check back with someone to make sure that's the right answer. And it's not about ticking the boxes to make sure. It's about from the minds, the hearts, and the souls. But again, we talked about politics, and the Westminster thing is about people's opinions and learning from that, but also putting that on paper through legislation. And I think we have that issue with his Westminster style. Most political styles is that is not tested, where people aren't tested for their knowledge of how to run.
Right. Now, Asia, what are your thoughts on the independent movement? Do you think it's a much needed shift within the community? What are your thoughts? Oh, Asia, you're muted.
So sorry.
Not a
I
problem.
wouldn't say I wouldn't say it's a much needed shift, but I do understand the the way it's going. So like Christian said, we do see the younger like Cyrie, for example. It's nice to see exactly what individuals think instead of, as a whole. So it is nice to see some independent candidates, but you really have to go off of what you believe in and not what the minority is, agreeing with.
100%. Now, just a general question that I would like to throw to each of you. Now, how would you describe the state of politics in Bermuda in your opinion? And I would like to throw it off to Taj first.
I think if anyone reads the Royal Gazette on a regular basis, they know how I feel about the state of politics in Bermuda, and I don't think it's in a good state. And I think it would be hard to argue that it is in a good state. But I think the same applies to politics globally. There's a shift towards polarization and populism on a global scale in politics, and Bermuda is certainly not exempt from that. But I think the Westminster style certainly doesn't help in any way. With that at all, and I don't think it's beneficial for any party or for Bermudians for the government to have such a significant majority with what many would describe as a weak opposition, and I think that is the biggest, I think, detriment to both parties, truthfully, but particularly the governing party, because when parties have such a large majority like this, it normally does them more harm than good in the next general election. So I think, yeah.
Right. Now, Malachi, how would you like to respond to that?
So I think that he has a very good point. I find it hard to disagree fully. I think that politics as a whole in Bermuda and worldwide is on a downward incline. He's completely correct with that. I do get his point with the opposition, and I think that it has to be more of a majority. I think we have to be a larger voice in the room, and we're working towards it. I think that that's something that we know we need. I think Bermuda knows it now from everything that's going on with the island. So I expect to see some change there. But I believe that what Taj has just said is very true. It's very valid.
Asia, what are your thoughts, especially as somebody involved with Progressive Minds? What are your thoughts on the state of politics in Bermuda?
Right now, and I did speak with this with one of my fellow colleagues, I guess I could say. But I really want to see where we can come and have a healthy debate, and not always against each other. We can have a healthy debate and just come together, because at the end of the day, we all have one goal, and that's to make Bermuda better. So I would suggest, more healthier debates, and like you said, we could debate, laugh afterwards,
Definitely. And Christian, what are your thoughts on the state of politics in Bermuda?
So state of politics and going from Taj and moving with the Westminster system of governments and how voting that encourages very clashing perspectives and points of views. What if we choose one which, such as vote voting, where you can rank? I think that it generally has been seen in the past from different jurisdictions to actually encourage more cooperation rather than polarization. And I think being a small island, as I would call a lifeboat in the middle of the ocean, I don't think there's enough room for us to have polarizing views. I think it's important for us to have camaraderie and building each other up to be better.
Definitely. Now, something very big in the news leading up to this by-election, the OBA pursued legal action to change the venue of this by-election because Reverend Emily Dill has such a close connection to it, but was unsuccessful. And I'd like to ask each of your thoughts, and especially Malachi as a candidate for the OBA, on what are your thoughts on that situation?
I think it was poorly handled. I definitely think that it was an advantage for the PLP to have their home base, basically the polling station. And I think it should have been raised by the FDM and the independent as well. I don't think it was only, it shouldn't have just been taken on by the opposition. That's something that affects the voter, the voter's point of view, the voter's mindset, the vote. Like, it's kind of like you trying to have a conversation with somebody, and it's somebody that you don't really get along with, but you're inviting them to your house. They're going to feel intimidated, so you have to find a common ground, a neutral ground to have that conversation. So I think, again, that kind of goes towards how politics is in Bermuda right now. I don't understand how it could be allowed to happen. But that's my personal point of view.
All right, I do have to impede this question as I would like to announce that the first count has been put in. So as it stands, for count one, Carl Neblett, OBA 28 votes, Emily Gail Dill 55 votes, Cyree Bean, Independent 22 votes, and Mark Bean, FDM 44 votes. Currently, the PLP is in the lead with count one.
Okay.
I would like to get some initial reaction. So Taj, what are your thoughts on these results?
Quite frankly, this is exactly what I would have predicted. I would have predicted the PLP. Obviously, we have more counts to go, but I would predict that the PLP would be in the lead, followed by the FDM, followed by the OBA, followed by the independent. That is what the trend dictates. That's what the previous election dictates. So that's kind of what I expected. I think anyone hoping that the PLP would lose, that I think that's a long shot. I really do. I find it almost impossible to think that they won't lose. Not to say it's impossible, but in my opinion, it's highly unlikely. But I definitely think the FDM will do quite well in this election, thanks to the candidates' experience in that constituency for the last 4 years, running in that constituency in the last general. Followed by the OBA, just because they're an established party, followed by the independent. That's what I would have predicted.
Definitely. Now, just looking at the numbers, which are quite low for count one. Now, Malachi, would you say that this is a pretty tight race as it stands, or would you agree with Taj with the results?
I think it's a pretty tight race. This is my first time really analyzing a political race like this, so I don't have a lot of experience in it, but I definitely think it's a tight race. From being up at the polling station, from talking to candidates, from talking to obviously different candidates that are actually up there, the constituents, I think that it's definitely a tight race. I know that we're probably missing another 250 people roughly, so if this is the first count, then let's wait and see how it turns out.
Asia, what is your initial reaction to this result, especially as being linked to PLP?
Just like Taj said, I'm not really surprised that it's this way. Dr. Dill, she's very historic, and she does have a great impact on the constituency 36. So I'm very not really surprised. But as far as the FDM and the independent, that was just definitely the way I saw it going as well.
Okay. Christian, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts, it makes complete sense looking at the PLP as a stronghold, and history has shown that's consistently. Mark Bean, being in politics for such a long time, is a familiar face. FDM hasn't had much action until this and last general election, so that's quite new, but because he's an old sort of face, familiarity. OBA, again, party for a while, so it's a sort of solid name out there. But again, I think the issue with the independents is people often, when they vote for the person, but before that, they vote for the party line. And so I think automatically it's a strategic vote, not just only for constituency 36, but looking at the whole general broad perspective of Bermuda. And they want to make sure their voice is heard rather than, let's say, putting on independent, though likelihood of success is very low. They feel like they need to put where the votes are, hence going for Mark Bean or the OBA.
Definitely. Now, it is notable to say that, especially in count one, that Mark Bean only is 11 votes behind Emily Gail Dill. Now, just piggybacking on our discussion in regards to the venue space, Tosh, what are your thoughts on the legal action that the OBA had over the venue for this by-election?
I think that was the right thing to do. I think any opposition would pursue that. So I completely understand. I think what is more shocking and should raise eyebrows is the fact that no one had the legal right to intervene. Neither the parliamentary registrar nor the governor had any right to intervene, to change the polling station subsequently. And also we should call into question the parliamentary registrar's due diligence in choosing this polling station in the first place. I think those are the main issues that I would raise. And then outside of that, in general, this is a larger ideological point, but I think using churches as polling stations is in general a bad idea, personally. But Bermuda's probably not ready for that conversation. But I think churches are not political. We have a separation of church and state, and many other reasons why some people would feel uncomfortable voting in churches. Churches are just not a good idea to have as voting spaces, especially if you're trying to be neutral. And then what was even more shocking was that when I listened to the rollout of the candidate, Dr. Emily Gale Deal, she basically said that it was a sign from God that she would win, that the polling station was at the church. And to me, that is deeply problematic, because elections are not a sign from God. Yeah, elections are the will of the people. And so to suggest that the polling station being at her residence is a sign from God that she would be in, I think that should raise eyebrows for everyone.
Christian, how would you like to respond to that?
Again, separating church from state is a general policy I think most governments have, pretty much all governments have. I think it should be obvious that you should have a neutral area. Again, if it's benefiting you, of course, nobody would say anything. But I think just for the clarity of it, I think it's important to ensure clarity in our politics, to ensure that it's properly done.
Asia, what are your thoughts on what has been expressed?
I do want to say that, just for clarity, that is not her residence. She hasn't lived there for a few years. I do see where they would say that it was an advantage, but I don't think that it was swayed the votes at all. Not all of her congregation would vote PLP. They may not be all PLP supporters, and I also think that not everyone that goes to that church lives in that constituency as well. So I do also think that it was poorly handled by the OBA and how they went about it, but I didn't think that it would sway the votes at all.
Thank you so much. And we are coming up on that last half hour. So I would like to give an opportunity for the whole floor to share your thoughts on the discussion as a whole, any thoughts on the by-election, or your thoughts on the state of politics in Bermuda as a whole. And I'd like to hand it off to Christian first.
I think overall, the fact that we have 4 options, I think is a really good thing about choice Bermuda, rather than a runoff against 2 people, which is normally the OBA and the PLP. Overall, I'm happy that it's being done, getting done correctly. And overall, I think there's to be improvements, of course, that we've mentioned before with other systems and things like that. But overall, I'm happy with working out.
Thank you, Christian. And Asia, what are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts, well, thank you for having us here. It's nice to have a healthy discussion with younger members of Bermuda. And I do think that, like I stated before, once we get back to healthy debating, we would definitely see a change. Just like I said, we have one goal, and that's just to make Bermuda better.
Thank you, Asia. And Tosh, what are your final thoughts?
I think having 4 candidates is excellent. However, this in general should raise questions about the integrity of our elections. If a candidate can be elected with winning less than 10% of the votes, that is a huge issue. And as a candidate, and if I was a candidate personally, I wouldn't feel confident to even represent a constituency if I didn't even secure 10% of the vote. So that is the major question that I think should be raised from the results of this election, because any candidate that wins will have ultimately secured less than 10% of the vote. And that's very unfortunate for many reasons, but largely because that's not the will of the people ultimately. You can't say if that's the will of the people or not if it's less than 10%.
Thank you. And Malachi, what are your final thoughts?
I think it's great to see more candidates, but I also think that it's from what it looks like, the people that have come out, I think that we need people to be more involved. I think we need to be more informed. I think we need to be more connected. And I think people need to get out and use their right to vote. We say it all the time, and I think it's underplayed. I think it's something that we need to do as a people. We need to educate not only the younger people but the older generation that our vote matters. Your vote can change the trajectory of our country. So I feel that it's great that we have 4 candidates, but I feel that it's also, another representation of how politics is going in Bermuda, that people aren't coming out. People aren't interested. People just don't see it. A lot of people didn't even know it was a by-election today when I was talking to them. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for all of your thoughts, and I would like to extend my deep gratitude for taking time out of your day to meet with us and for joining me this evening. We're going to take a quick break and check in on the polling station. When we return, I'll be joined by a new set of guests to continue the conversation. Thank you so much to all of you, and have a good evening. evening, Bermuda. Welcome back, and thank you to those who are tuned in. My name is Ajay Peets, and I'll be moderating this evening. I am joined by Sophia Tessitore, Omar Dill, Shamari Tolbert Warridge, and Taj Donville Otterbridge. I would like to give the floor to those to introduce themselves, and I would like to start off with Sophia.
Hi everyone. I'm Sophia Tessitore, and I'm the OBA candidate for constituency 21, Pembroke South East, and I'm also the youngest active politician currently.
I would like to also hand it off to Omar.
Yes, good evening. Good evening. Omar Deal. I am a regional organizer for the FDN.
And Shamari.
Yeah. Good evening to my fellow panelists and to you, RJ, and people of Bermuda once again. My name is Shmartel George, chairman of Progressive Minds, the PLP's youth wing. Uh, and I told you guys a little bit about me before.
And Taj, can you please reintroduce yourself?
Sure. Just to restate, I'm a social activist of sorts and a political commentator, and I am studying a Master of Public Administration at the London School of Economics and Political Science.
All right, so just to kick it off, with count one results being in, I would like to get your initial thoughts on those results. And just to a little reminder for our viewers, currently the count one results, Carl Neblett, the OBA, has 28 votes. Emily Gail Dill, the PLP, 55 votes. Cyree Bean, Independent, 22 votes. And Mark Bean, FDM, 44 votes. I'd like to hand it off to Sophia first. What are your thoughts on count one as it stands? Oh, Sophia, you are muted.
So sorry about that. Okay, I'm muted. So I think the first results are always the most interesting, at least from my experience in the previous by-election. It usually swings a bit more PLP. But this is a constituency that regardless does lean in the past few cycles towards PLP. What's most interesting to me is the FDM actually, and how many votes they've gotten. So they're second. And then, of course, as the OBA candidate, I am quite disappointed that we only have 28 as it stands, but we will have to see how it develops. So I think we're seeing people actually in the FDM rising in popularity based on this margin.
Omar, as a regional organizer for the FDM, how do you feel about the results?
I would say that I was there all day from 8 o'clock in the morning right up until the polls closed. I had the pleasure of being in the room, taking note of every person coming in. I knew the PLP, the OBA, as well as ourselves, app data throughout the day. So I was a bit surprised at the result. We knew that the PLP had a large number of votes. I'm actually surprised by the amount of votes that the OBA got. We actually had Cyree in the top three based on our counts. And I'm also a little bit surprised at our result. We were expecting to be a little bit closer to the PLP, but it is the first count. Sorry, I'm talking too much, but we actually counted about close to 400 votes total, approximately. And we're looking at about 75 actually as being a magic number for somebody to take it all.
Right. Now, 75, that sounds quite low, especially with the size of this constituency. Shamari, what are your thoughts on the results so far?
Disappointing. It's disappointing that we don't have enough people coming out to vote. Obviously, the Bermudian people don't feel like this process is working for them. They don't feel like this process is beneficial to them. They don't feel it's. We have four candidates. None of us could have excited the people in Sands to come out and vote. None of us could come out and make sure that the people of Sands could vote. I think it's disappointing. It's disappointing, and I think Taj was saying in the last panel, the quality of candidates across the board have not been able to resonate with the Bermudian people, excite the Bermudian people, galvanize the Bermudian people to come out and just place a ballot in a box. That's a simple thing in a democracy. You have people in countries around the world who die to vote, and we take it for granted. We take it for granted. It's the simplest thing in a democracy. We can't take 10 minutes of some people in America, they have to wait 7 hours to vote. They have to stand in a line because they live in a state that represses the right to vote. They have to travel an hour to go and vote. And we here in Bermuda are taking it for granted. And yes, my candidate might be winning, but we as a country, we are losing ourselves. We are losing ourselves by not being active in this process. This is the only way we're going to improve our country. And if we don't start now, we're going to wait till it's absolutely too late.
Mm. You bring up so many important points, and especially, I'm just shifting gears a little bit. This blends very well into my next question in terms of engagement with our constituents. Now, I like to hand this to Taj. There's been a lot of engagement with C36 candidates in the media. How important are these public conversations in engaging the community, and do you think it's effective?
I think they're vital. I think it's vital to have all the candidates appear together, and I think that it's vital to have them appear independently, individually, so that so that the constituents can see how they do against each other, but also how they stand for themselves. I think that's vital, and it's a shame that Bermuda's only starting to do this now, and it's really a shame that the PLP decided not to participate in the TNN debate that all of the other candidates participated in. I just don't know what that would be about. Why that wouldn't be a paramount opportunity. So yeah.
Definitely. And Sophia, what are your thoughts in terms of the quality of engagement that we've had in this by-election alone and in general? Do you think it's effective?
I think, as a candidate, there are multiple ways for you to get your voice out there and to really represent yourself and try to gain as many votes as you can, of course. I think one way is on the doorstep, but in terms of media, I will say for this by-election and the previous ones that I've seen personally, the media has been very on top of it. I think they've done a very good job at trying to get different perspectives, I would say. But I am very surprised that the PLP candidate didn't, go on the Daily Show, the Daily Hour the other day and has refused to do interviews. I think that's very shocking. I think, it's almost counterintuitive, right? You want to take any opportunity that you can get to speak out and represent your views or represent your, your voters and your constituents, right? At the end of the day, regardless of which party they support. So it just isn't a good show of good faith, in my opinion. But in terms of media, I have been quite impressed by, the amount of media and the amount of airtime that this by-election has gotten.
Definitely. Now, during this by-election, there has been a lot of talk about accountability. Now, what does that look like to you, Omar?
I mean, I think this is a perfect example to kind of raise the temperature a little bit. I mean, we have Tamari here, we have Taj here, two fairly well outspoken, very well educated persons in the political, the PLP structure. And, I think we have to ask ourselves, are they satisfied with what their party has done, whether it be not taking part in a debate, policies, the state of the island, and what are they willing to do about it internally, or even jump ship and move to another camp that's willing to kind of speak more to their desires and to their ideologies, So when we talk about voters or the lack of participation, we have to look at ourselves and say, well, are we stepping out to hold somebody accountable? From our camp internally, we've been very vocal. We've tried to express policies. Some of these things are not agreed with by persons, but that's all a part of it. The vulnerability of being willing to speak out. And if you are not heard, action on top of that, move. And we saw a candidate or MP jump seats, right? To me, these are the things that are important. We saw Minister Dickinson speak out from a PLP point of view. We saw another MP also speak out, not to that party line, right? So these are the things that I think are very important. Oftentimes I hear, independents, they can represent the people. Minister Dickinson, perfect example. He thought this was not good for the people. He's part of a party, but he doesn't have to toe that party line, right? It's about accountability and respect. And when we all stand up and become that MP Dickinson and become that candidate who is willing to say something even though others don't agree. That's where accountability comes from. So again, I'm turning up the temperature a little bit. I see you guys' reactions, but yeah.
Yes, and I would like to give the floor to Shamari to respond.
I would love to respond because one thing about me and one thing about being young is you get to set the direction for the future of your party. You get to set the direction for the future of the Progressive Labor Party. And me, I believe in progressive labor values. One thing I believe climate change is created by human activity. Your leader doesn't believe that. And if we
Sure.
can't come to that basic fact that climate change is something that we as human beings have been the main our activity has been the main factor for climate change, but we can't even agree on how to solve the issue. So yes, you're right. We have to speak up against our party when we disagree, and I have. Trust me, me and David Burke don't agree on everything. Me and Colonel Burks don't agree on everything. Me and whoever minister don't agree on everything. But you know what? We have a basic understanding of reality. We know that things like climate change is affected by human activity. We know that and we have a framework where we may disagree on the strategy, we may disagree on how far we go or how hard we push, but we agree in the philosophy that we need progressive values that give people dignity in their lives. We had a minimum wage. We have a minimum wage because we believe that there should be a baseline where everybody should get paid above this rate. That's something that other people may not agree with, but I agree with that. You know why? Because I believe workers deserve dignity. That's some people, a lot of people don't agree with. So yes, I'll push my party, but I can't agree with some of the things that your party espouses. The OBA, I think Sophia is somebody who's a part of the not a part of the LGBT, but is an advocate for the LGBT community. That's something that we can agree on and take it to Parliament together. Hopefully, Sophia, if you are elected, if I am the leader of the Progressive Minds, we will help you along because we agree on their shared values. We're the shared values between a party who believes in climate change is created by human activity and a party who doesn't. We don't have that same value. So I'll push my party as far as I can push them, and I hope you can push your party on as far as you can push them.
Mm. Sophia, what would you like to add to the conversation, especially in regards to your perspective on what accountability should look like in this space?
Well, I can definitely relate to Shamari and Taj. We all know the recent situation with John Seymour's comments. I will say personally, on a personal level, he's a very nice guy, but I enjoy working with him, but I did really disagree with his comments and his statements. They go against a lot of my values, and I didn't think it was appropriate. That being said, we're all under a similar banner politically. We agree with the direction of the One Bermuda Alliance. And so there are moments where you do have to work with people you don't necessarily always agree with. And to your point, Shamari, I totally agree. I think what we're missing a lot of in Bermudian politics is bipartisanship and working for the benefit of the people. It's all about politics, and let's get this bill through and not how will this actually benefit Bermudians. And let's actually work together across the aisle to make this legislation or this policy better to benefit everybody. It's like the corporate income tax amendment, where we want to ring fence some of the corporate income tax to go towards our sinking funds, towards our debt, which is really holding us down as an island and for the younger generations. And it was immediately rejected for politics, even though it's something that definitely would benefit people. So I think we need more bipartisanship for sure. So I would totally be willing to work with somebody who just wants better for Bermuda as a whole. And I really hope that changes with like the younger generation of people who are getting politically active.
Definitely. Now, Tosh, I need to bring you into this conversation. What would you like to add to the discourse?
I have a lot of things to say, but I'm gonna try to be concise. I think in terms of bipartisanship, I think it's vital, and I think the PLP is doing a disservice to themselves by not engaging the opposition. That is a huge mistake for them. And a perfect example of that is an example I literally heard in a lecture today from one of my professors who was a senior statesman in her resident country. She said she was served in a government, and the next government immediately reversed one of the policies. And she asked, why do people She asked her friend who was still in that party why the people didn't defend the policy. Simple, because the government at the time had such a large majority. The government she was involved in had such a large majority. They didn't consult the opposition. So why, when the opposition takes power, would they bother consulting the former government, which is now the opposition? So bipartisanship doesn't just benefit the opposition. Bipartisanship benefits the government in the event that they lose the next election, because it is about sustainability of policy. You don't want to have a government come in with a policy and then the next government come and change it. That doesn't benefit anyone. So it's about ensuring that you engage all stakeholders. And I think the PLP government taking this autocratic approach, even with this healthcare legislation, and not listening to the stakeholders, I think is a huge mistake. And I think it really speaks to what tends to happen when governments have significant majorities. They tend to become autocratic. I think it could also speak to the leadership style of certain people within the PLP's leadership. I won't make it personal, but I'll leave it there. I think for me personally, I think it's vital that I say this. I hold all parties equally accountable. And if you read any of my writings, you will agree with that. I don't take a particular side. The side that I do take is the side of the people, and the side of progress, the side of I'm a leftist, yes. That's the side I take, and the PLP is the closest to that. We can have that conversation, that ideological conversation, for as long as we want, but that's where I stand. I don't support the current PLP government, and I've made that very clear in my writing. And I don't know where best I would place my votes elsewhere, because listen, the PLP government has had a history of having queer people involved, openly queer people involved, whereas the other parties, the leader of the FDM has made horrific comments about the LGBTQ plus community in the past. I can pull them up now. And the OBA has candidates who are saying all sorts of stuff on Twitter. The chairman of the FDM has said negative things about me personally on Twitter. And that, to me, would never get my support. So if the FDM is looking to gain voters, the way to go about it is certainly not that chairman personally attacking a potential voter on Twitter. So, and I don't personally attack anyone in my writing. I talk about policy, I talk about ideology, I talk about political leanings. I don't talk about people personally. And I find it really discouraging that we allow ourselves to stoop to the level of personal attacks. That's not the direction that I would want to see our politics go, and that doesn't serve anyone.
Thank you, Taj. Now, before we close this segment of our discussion, a lot has been said, and I do want to just give Omar one last opportunity to respond.
Yeah, I would say first starting off, my question would be, how long are you willing to wait? So I don't know if you guys had a chance. I actually wrote something, and it's in Burn News today. It might be anywhere because that's tomorrow. How long are you willing to wait? You spoke about pushing from the inside, but well, just as bad as I do, you're not pushing because you have MPs who can't push, MPs who remain silent. So your voice, you're doing your best, I'm sure, but I think at some point you have to take that next step. The second thing I would say as it relates to climate change, great example. What I would ask is, in the last 10 years, let's say, what has been done from a PLP government point of view, or, the OBA might want to chime in, what has been done to affect climate change to what you would say? And what I would say is we've released policy or spoken about public policy publicly that I believe would affect climate change, quote unquote. We have a PLP government who cut taxes on heavy fuel oil, which is proven to pollute. So it's making it cheaper to pollute in Bermuda, where climate change is saying that they want to provide subsidies for renewables. The exact opposite, right? So we want LNG. We've been public about that. It's cleaner than what we're currently burning. What I've seen is lack of action, which is actually leading to more pollution. So again, I would rather make a move. If it's the wrong move, it's in the right direction, right? So that's all I'll touch on for now, dude. I would love to continue this conversation, and I think we should all do this more. I've spoken with Dwayne Robinson. I've spoken with the new CEO of the credit union, Mr. Parent Chief. And we've had these discourses, right? And I think we all need to have these discourses more often so we can get an understanding of, what, we're closer than we think. I heard Mr. Taj Donville Otterbridge speak about the PLP being the closest to left wing. But then I see the PLP giving tax breaks to large corporations at the expense of social services. That's far right. You see what I'm saying? I've written things on that I'm sure you've read. So the more that we speak, we are all going to realize that we're speaking a similar language. And I think that we need to have these conversations more frequently behind closed doors and in the public forum. And in the FDM, we've had very public discussions about a lot of things. We have recorded conversations. They're all live on Twitter. Anybody can go pull them up, pull up the receipts. It's there. No other party can say that, right? So what we want is you can disagree, but you can only disagree because you can see what we think. For the other parties, it's more of like what you mentioned, Shamari, it's the legacy, the PLP values. And what I would say is the PLP of 20 years ago, where there were legitimate legends, right? There's not one legitimate legend in the PLP government today, period. So that, I'll just leave it on. And Shamari, maybe you will become a legend, right? But today, MP wise, these are mice compared to the man that used to run the PLP. So I'll just leave it at that.
And women.
Now, just shifting gears, and I would like to hand it over to Sophia, especially as a youngest running candidate. Why do you think so many young people are disinterested or just can't be bothered with politics in Bermuda?
That's a good one. I'm still trying to understand that because I think a lot of young people are very interested in global politics. Like they're very up to date with American politics and things like that. Like they're watching the debates, they're following like whatever Kamala Harris is doing, which I think is great. But there's very little action on the home front, which I think really needs to change. You can definitely care about global issues. I think that's important to be educated on that. But at the same time, if you're not being an activist in your own local community, what are you really doing? So I think to be disengaged, a lot of my friends aren't even registered to vote, first of all. So that's a huge problem. I think part of that is on the current system as it stands when it comes to registering to vote and, you know, participating in the system. And also the fact that, like, you know, you can't vote if you're overseas, if there's an election and you're in university. So I think that also plays into it. And there is also the fact that it's very polarizing in Bermuda. Like politics is very, very polarizing. When election time comes around, you're very much like split into a category like, oh, you're an OBA supporter, you're a PLP supporter. So I think that really stops a lot of young people from wanting to engage and tie themselves one way or the other to a certain political party. And I think that's a major issue. So we're seeing like this huge generation gap in terms of political candidates. Like I'm the youngest, the oldest person I think is my colleague Dwayne, who's 30. He's like 7 years older than me, right? So we're really running into a big issue in that sense. And then I think people are just overwhelmed. They're stressed. They're trying to deal with their own personal issues, and then to turn on the news and see politicians fighting with each other, and you know all these new legislations and issues that are happening, and Belco increases and whatnot. I think it's very disheartening for young people. So they'd rather just disengage and tune it out than actually participate in the system. So I would say, yeah, that's a big part of it.
Now, Shamari, you're the chairman of Progressive Minds, which is the youth wing of the PLP. So, have you had trouble engaging with young people, and do you agree that there just is simply no interest in politics among Bermuda's youth?
Well, yeah, we have trouble. We have trouble, and we have made some strides as well. We're in politics. You seem like you're making momentum, and then you stall a little bit, and you make a little bit of momentum, then it seems like you're going back to square one. But at the end of the day, policy is going to excite our young people. What we do to improve their material condition will improve in their lives will excite our young people and get them to vote. And like I said earlier, with the voter turnout that we see now, no one has done that in this by-election so far. So look, I think every political party wants to, galvanize and bring in and rope in young people. We're all looking to do that. But my party, we have to do a better job. I'm pretty sure the OBA feels the same way. But we as young people also have to realize that this is our moment. Nobody is going to hand the country to you. Nobody's going to hang you the keys to the cabinet office. You have to, or any other position within the country. We have to go out there and make changes ourselves. Every generation has that obligation to push forward, to make changes, to bring things into our social construct of our society. And we, as young Bermudians, we keep talking, but we're not making that action. We have become chronic complainers instead of avid agitators, and that's become the problem. Twitter, everybody likes Twitter and social media and things like that, but we're not using it to the best of our ability to affect the change that we want to see. I know one panelist talked about universal healthcare. I believe it was Dwayne Robinson, but I don't remember who. But how are we going to make sure and galvanize young people and make sure they're learning about these policies that could uh, that could improve their lives? That's the things that we have to focus on. So policy will excite our young people, not games and gimmicks. So that's what we're going to focus on: improving people's material condition and making sure that young people across this country see the government and the politicians in their country embarking on a project that they could buy into, embarking on a journey that they could buy into, having not a platform, but a vision of what Bermuda could be that they could buy into. And we're not presenting that the FDM isn't, the OBA isn't, the independence isn't, the PLP isn't. And that's why we have low voter turnout today. That's why so many young people across the board are disenfranchised. And that is why uh, we're seeing the people on the streets just saying they're not going to vote. They're not saying they're going to vote for the FDN because they're new and they're shiny and they got nice yellow shirts. They're saying we're not going to show up to the polls because we don't believe in none of you's visions and we don't believe in none of you are telling the truth.
Mm. That's so true. And Taj and I had our start in politics all the way back from Bermuda Youth Parliament. Shout out
Mhm.
Bermuda Youth Parliament. Um, but just something to just shift the conversation a bit. I've had a minister tell me that, individuals like myself, like Sophia, Taj, and Shamari, that we're the only few engaged within politics, and that's okay. There only needs to be a few. I wildly disagree with that. What are your thoughts on that, Taj?
I think, hmm, I think the responsibility falls on both hands. But I want to say here is that um, it's not just the responsibility of young people to vote, and I think the problem we're having in Bermuda is not just young people. This voter apathy is not just among young people. Young people aren't the majority of the population. Young people are in fact the minority. So older people are the majority. So the problem is what I think has happened is that people have been historically aligned with one party, and then they realize that that party is not working in their best interest, and then they have a moral dilemma because I've canvassed and I've had white Bermudians say to me directly that they would never vote for the PLP just because it's run by black people, and they would only vote for the OBA or the UBP or whatever iteration of that there is. So let's not be mistaken here. Young people are not to blame for this voter apathy. The responsibility falls on all Bermudians, and I think it's so unfortunate that Bermudians have relied on values and voting for a particular candidate because they like them, or voting for a party because the family has voted for a party, or they vote for the PLP because of how terrible they think the UBP government was, and the PLP was the only other option. But now they're being faced with a moral dilemma. And that moral dilemma is the PLP has a majority government of 30 out of 36 seats. And in my opinion, they have improved worthy of that significant majority. And I think a lot of Bermudians feel that way. And I think that and the OBA is in the same position. And that's why they took such a huge hit in 2020. It was disastrous for the OBA. They only got won 6 seats. That we basically have no opposition. So both parties have a responsibility here that they're failing at, and I think that is the core of the issue, is that people have too long relied on values and not looking at what's in the best interest for themselves and the future of Bermuda. They've looked at history. They've looked at what the PLP has done in the past versus what the OBA, what the UBP has done in the past, and then the FDM is thrown in the mix and shakes it up a bit, and so that's exciting. but I think a lot of people don't know where to place their votes, and I think that's the core issue.
And speaking of votes, count two is in. And I would like to draw some attention to that. So for Carl Neblett, OBA, count two, 58. Emily Gale Dill, 102. PLP. Cyree Bean, Independent, 59. Mark Bean, FDM, 78. Now, just based on count two results, what is your reaction to that, Omar?
I mean, I'm biased, obviously. Again, we expected the PLP to be out front. Maybe about by 2 p.m. We looked at them as a leader. We had a big influx of voters after 3, and that, I believe, should have gave us the boost that we needed. So it's kind of expected. It is a safe seat, quote unquote. But we're hoping for the victory. Everything else, I think, is kind of to be expected.
Now, I do would like to note that the closeness between Mark Bean and Emily Gale Dill has greatly increased. From a lead of 11, Emily Gale Dill now has a lead of 24. What are your thoughts on that, Shamari?
Well, I think that Mr. Deal said it best. This is a PLP stronghold. We'll see if the FDM voters are enough in the avenue after the 3 o'clock point that he said is enough to push him over the edge. But this is once again, we're looking at the turnout, we're looking at the amount of people who didn't vote, but also we see a very good showing for Emily Gale Deal. And it looked like I said before in my first segment with the panelists I had then, it's about if the PLP can get the base out. And it looks like they're getting the base out. I think that those numbers, even from the independent and the OBA and AFDM, it's still taking away a good bit of votes, or they still have a good bit of votes. So it isn't like anybody is having such a commanding lead. But I guess when you look at the voter count, you could say that. I think it's good for Emily Gale Deal, and it looks like she could hopefully pull it over the line. But it's a very interesting time in Bermudian politics, and I think that the Progressive Labour Party should take this as a victory, but they should also see it as a sign that we have to get to work and ensure that we're getting our message to people and making sure the policy we're putting in place is benefiting people's lives. I think overall it looks like so far like I said, low voter turnout, but in the end, I think the PLP is going to pull it home. And I think that the second place, like I said, is it going to be Mr. B? And it looks like he will achieve the second place. Of course, we have the third count to see. Let's see if Omar's right and that influx of FDN voters come through.
Right. And I also would like to draw attention that actually Cyrene Bean has overtaken Carl Neblett by 1 vote. He has 59 and Carl Neblett has 58. What is your reaction to that, Taj?
I think that will prove to be a serious problem for the OBA, and I think that is so unfortunate for them, because they've announced a platform. So while people may not have been satisfied with Carl Nablett specifically, the OBA has laid the platform bare. It's very similar to the 2020 platform. If I recall, it's much more simple than the 2020 platform, but ideologically and policy wise, it's very, very similar to the 2020 platform. And I think if the OBA comes last, I think the opposition leader, his position is in jeopardy, in terms of his leadership of the party and in which direction he's taken the party. And I also think it will call into question, is the OBA Bermuda's opposition party? Is the OBA suitable to be Bermuda's opposition party? Or will they be replaced by the FDM? That's fully a possible option. And I think the OBA really needs to look within with these results and see why the policies and the ideology is not resonating with Bermudians. I think that is the core problem that they have to figure out. No one else can figure that out for them.
Now, Sophia, how would you like to respond to that?
But can't we say the same thing about when Lindsay Simmons came third in the previous by-election? Following that line of logic? I mean, I think it is very interesting with the independents and how they're actually being very competitive. We haven't seen that in a while in the past few election cycles. So, I mean, definitely one to watch. But by that argument, you could say the same thing about, in a sense, about the PLP and how their hold is weakening in Bermuda. I think so. Yeah.
Shamari, I would like to bring you into the conversation. What are your thoughts on this discourse?
Well, I hear what Sophia is saying, but I think that the FDM probably missed an opportunity in C10 because I'm pretty sure that a lot of those votes that went to the OBA would have went to the FDM. Look, I think that the next vote is going to be the next vote that comes out is going to be very interesting. Let's see what happens. Look, this is going to be something that the PLP wanna win because it sets a tone for the general election. Coming into the general election, keeping this seat and ensuring that it's a PLP seat when you have so many candidates, OBA, FPM, independent vying for it. I think the PLP want to set that tone going into the next election, and we know constitutionally by February of 2026 we're going to have another election. So, like I said before, the OBA want to keep the momentum, and right now of winning that seat, and right now it doesn't. It's very very unlikely they're going to win in 36. So I wonder what the feeling would be going into a general. And then of course we have to remember in the last election, I think the OBA came third in that one as well. So maybe this just is a seat that is just completely, turned off. Well, I don't want to say turned off. That just doesn't resonate with the One Bermuda Alliance and what they put out. And of course, we know there's a PLP platform. We know that Mark Bean is someone who has and Syrie have a community familiarity with the people of constituency 36. So I think that yes, Sophia, you have a point about CTM, but I also think that you can look at it another way as well.
Now, Omar, I would like to bring you into the conversation in the context of, do you think that the FDM is ready to be in a position to be a robust opposition?
I want to say this first is that there's an elephant in the room, and I'm not going to explicitly say it, but I would love to get behind the scenes and talk to you guys about it. But I think somebody mentioned it earlier in the sense of the independent vote currently. Those are persons who are either disillusioned with the OBA or disillusioned with the PLP. And in this particular seat, 36, it is not expected that an OBA candidate will ever be able to win this seat, right? The independent candidate has essentially, as was said, steered votes away from a potential FDM win. And, strategically, that was something that we came into this knowing. We've knocked on every single door, and, we had that as our biggest risk factor. Syrie being was the biggest risk factor for the FDM losing, not because he was going to beat us, but because the votes for him would have been votes for us, right? So I don't even remember what your question was, but I want to throw that out there. From a political strategy point of view, Sophia also mentioned what the OBA and the PLP done in C10. Again, this is strategy things that was Michael Dunkley's seat, right? Michael Dunkley, big figure. The PLP candidate, I don't even think 100 PLP voters came out, right? That is a PLP base. It can be Loyal Hill, big PLP voting area. However, they didn't show up, right? So it's a lot of little factors going on. And I think, again, I'd love to get behind the scenes and talk with all you guys. But what I would continue to stress is that how long are you going to wait, right? If you want to be great, if you want Bermuda to change, if you want to step up, waiting your turn. Again, Dwayne, he's on the scene. There's no reason why others, Mr. Parent Chief, I always encourage him, and there are many others who you guys shouldn't just sit back and allow Bermuda to head in this direction. Sophia mentioned a great point, corporate income tax. Under a PLP government, we are going to squander it. And companies are probably going to leave us. This is a fact, right? So things need to be done. And it's a lot of strategy that goes on behind the scenes. And it's going to be interesting in that third count. Based on what I see, I'm just going to hold my thoughts and kind of wait and let it play out.
Before I move on, I still would like an answer to my initial question is,
Sorry.
do you no, you're all good. Do you think that the FDM is in a position to be an effective opposition if given the opportunity to replace the OBA?
100%. So, I mean, Mark has said it. I believe, again, I'm biased. I believe Mark has one seat in 36 will have a very positive effect on Parliament in Bermuda for the next however long until David Bragg calls an election. I also believe since we have started releasing policies, since we have started writing op-eds in the last 6 months, since we have released positions, I have seen the OBA release a platform, and I see a lot of things that I've personally talked about, right? Before we started talking about certain things, I've never heard the OBA talk about community and foundation. I haven't heard the PLP mention so much about these taxes and reducing regulations. Sorry, not taxes, reducing regulations. These are key principles that we've spoken about. In a radio interview, I said, I'm happy as long as the job gets done. So if it's the PLP doing it, if it's the OBA doing it, things need to change. And as an opposition, FDM, whether we have 6 seats, 2 seats, or 15 seats, we have already been effective, and we believe we will continue to be effective as the only party presenting tangible things that the people resonate with, right? And I encourage the OBA and I encourage the PLP and the independents to read these policies and understand that they resonate with the people and they will help Bermuda in the future. So please, take your rightful stand, Samari. Don't sit back and wait. Sophia, take your rightful stand. You're already a candidate, obviously. So that's what I expect of you, if you believe in what you have. So I don't know if that answers your question, but there you go.
No, it definitely did. And Taj, I know you are eager to respond.
Yeah, I think if I can offer one thing, this is what I think this by-election is definitely a litmus test for how Bermudians are feeling, and I think the voter apathy in this by-election will transition to the general election. I mean, the last general election had one of the lowest voter turnouts we've ever had in history, percentage-wise. So I think that will continue, and undoubtedly that had to do with COVID and it being a snap election. But I think voter apathy is still very present in our community, and I think this by-election illustrates that, particularly in a PLP stronghold. Let's remember that in 2012, the OBA did not win that election. The PLP lost it. It's very different. The PLP lost that election because the voters did not come out. The OBA did not win that election by any means. The PLP lost it, and those are two very different things. And what I do want to make clear is that the only way that the PLP will not be the government following the next election is if the FDM, the OBA, and the independents get enough seats to be able to form a coalition to create a government. That's the only way that the PLP will not be the next government. So my question to Sophia and Omar is, what is the appetite for that? What is the appetite for that bipartisanship? And I guess to say to Shamari, what would be the appetite for that bipartisanship on the PLP side to form a coalition with the OBA or the FDM or the independents, given that the vote could be so split across with no party gaining enough seats to be the sole government? Are any parties willing and ready to take on the responsibility of building a coalition? I don't know. That's something Bermuda has never seen, and I'm not sure the style of leadership that I'm looking at from all the leaders of the parties. It doesn't seem like they would be willing to build coalitions, but I don't know, and so I'll let the other people speak for their parties.
I think that's a fair question, Taj. And Sophia, I was going to hand it off to you because a lot has been mentioned about the OBA, and I wanted to give you a chance to respond.
Yeah, so first of all, I do want to address the comment about, you kind of implied, Omar, that the OBA copied a lot of concepts or a lot of ideas from your platform. I want to make it clear because since I first joined the OBA 2 years ago, I've been very involved with the platform, okay? This has been a process, like I said, for 2 years. So a lot of those conversation things we have been talking about have been things happening within the room right? So it's not like we saw one of your documents or a town hall and then copied off of it. I do want to make that clear. This was like months and years of speaking to stakeholders, speaking to our constituents, researching, and then finalizing and writing that platform and policy that we do think, okay, yes, you can say the criticism has been that's vague, that's boring, but we want policy that actually works. And we want to take Bermuda back to, a core place where it functions as it should, right? Where our roads are paved, where the education system is solid and actually prepares our youth for whatever job they choose, whatever field, and the labor market, right? So I would say we didn't copy. This is original, right? Maybe boring, maybe safe, but Bermuda needs some sort of stability and security. So far as coalition, that's very interesting. Like you said, we've never seen that before. I think if you're willing to work for Bermuda as a whole, if you care about Bermudians and you're willing to be bipartisan, I'm not personally, I can't speak for the entire OBA or what we would do in that situation, because that would have to go between our entire caucus, right? I personally am not against that. I just want Bermuda to be in a place where we can sustain ourselves and be successful. So on principle, I'm not personally against it, but it would have to, of course, go to our caucus and be a conversation between every party and group involved in that situation.
Shamari, what are your thoughts on what has been discussed so far, especially about a possible coalition?
Well, I think coalition governments can be difficult. I believe it was France who had a lot of problems with after the elections with trying to build a coalition to govern. I know Israel, even though I'm not a big fan of the war, the genocide that's going on. I know they have a lot of problems for trying to build a coalition. It's about finding people or finding a party or finding a coalition that agrees on enough stuff to be able to form that government. So I think that if there is an opportunity for a coalition government, we should be able to do that. But we're going to have to see if the PLP, OBA at the end, what overlap do we have to form that coalition government? And I think that Sophia and Omar, they alluded to having a lot of similarities within the platform, and I don't think it is. And as Sophia said, it was like he was trying to say that it was sterling for him. I think that a lot of times great minds think alike. So it's about finding those overlaps between the different governments, I mean parties, and seeing what policies that we can do, what we agree with, or that we can work together to bring about. That's how you form your coalition. So let's see what each platform is, what the independents believe, and if they're willing to join a coalition government, and then we can see assess from there. But it's about how much overlap that we can have, so that we can actually run the government. Because it's great to have a coalition government and say, two different parties that run the government, but do they have enough overlap to say that we can run the government efficiently and effectively because we have at least good similarities about how we can, or our ideology, so we don't come into trouble. Because you can have a situation where you have a coalition, somebody does something, they pull out the coalition, and now you gotta, go back to trying to find a new coalition, or you have to have another election. So that's the only thing that I would say. I'm not trying to say it's bad or good. I think it could be good if we have enough overlap. We have a lot of partners in like France and England and whatnot that have a lot of shared ideology. A lot of the smaller partners, of course, but if we can create that coalition, I mean, I don't oppose to it if we can agree on enough stuff and agree on enough policy.
Now, Omar, earlier you had mentioned a lot of the op-eds and policies that the FDM has produced. I think your op-eds are great, but in reference to your policies, where are they? Because it's not accessible on your party website. So where could the general electorate digest this information?
So to answer your question in two parts, first I want to touch on the coalition thing. So everything that we do media-wise is recorded and it remains on Twitter or on Facebook as a recording that can be listened back to. Our receipts are there, right? So on David Sullivan's show in early July, we speak about being willing to form a coalition government. This is not a new idea to us. We believe that parties working together is the key to solving Bermuda's problems. It's in our crest, gold, yellow, and green, representing all three parties. So that's something that we're definitely open to and interested in doing, number one. Number two, the only full policy that we have released is the education policy. We will be rolling out full policies, quote unquote, one by one. The by-election actually threw our schedule off, but as soon as this by-election is over, we will continue. However, like I said, as it relates to our receipts, again, social media, we have recorded sessions, an hour, hour and a half, where we discuss education, energy, infrastructure, economy, healthcare, right? If you have the time, and I know many people don't, and we're going to actually break it down into more bite-sized pieces, but persons can access this information and see exactly what the FDM believes, i.e. corporate income tax. We've spoken about that. We don't believe that, universal healthcare is the best option, i.e. we see the healthcare providers, we see our costs, we see what the doctors are saying about it. It's obviously not a good idea. We believe our current dual payer model is kind of effective. And I can go on and on. And again, this is consistent. Any party member can speak on this. We don't have a gag order. It's not, Omar is always going to speak his mind, and what I believe aligns with what the party also believes in. So that many other parties, they cannot necessarily speak on things. We do not bite our tongue. Whether you agree with us or you don't, we're okay with that, but we're going to put it on the table, right? So, and I apologize, Sophia, if you, obviously, like you say, you've been working on it for a while, but my point was just that most things or some things that you have talked about, we already had it printed, right? So they're not new ideas. And I don't think somebody mentioned about your policies not being good enough to win the election. I don't think this by-election was any indication of how good or bad your policy positions were. Your leader clearly stated that he will have more town halls going forward to provide more detail, right? But that's the nature of politics. People take things and they run with it, and it's propaganda essentially. So again, if we all get in the room, we're all going to agree,
Definitely. Now, with count three imminent, and we are anticipating that soon, hopefully. Until then, how do you think political parties can better foster trust with the electorate, particularly young voters who may feel disillusioned with the current system? And I'd like to throw that to Sophia first.
I think one way that would be good is I would say just really engaging them more and having more of a process or some sort of forum for them to really have their voice heard. So like a town hall setup, for example, I think that would be good. And also just, having more youth volunteers and youth involved. I think it has to be almost like a grassroots thing where it's like very community centered or focused. I think that would be an effective way to do that, in my opinion. But it is difficult because we're in a time where I think a lot of young people are just disengaged in general from politics. So it's kind of like what's like a catch-22 almost, right? It's like, okay, we need more youth so the youth feel invited, but the youth don't want to join because they're so disengaged from the current state of Bermuda and the political system.
Now, Shamari, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what can we do different to engage our young people?
Well, like I said, we're gonna stop the gimmicks and focus on policy. I know Senator Ariana Hutchinson was talking about the abortion laws in Bermuda the other day in the Senate. This should galvanize our women in our country and even men who agree with that to make a change in that. We act like we don't have no agency. We have no um, ability to organize and make changes. And if women and men who believe that women should have an abortion would have whatever without having to go through the rigmarole that she explained while she was in the Senate, we can create a, like we said, coalition between people like I'm pretty sure Sophia believes in that. I'm pretty sure Taj believes in that. Maybe Omar as well. I don't know all his views, but we can create a coalition to make sure that women have the body autonomy to make the decisions for themselves, whether it's abortion or surgical sterilization. There are a lot of barriers that women face in those fields. So we have to make sure that we're presenting policy that is affecting people's lives and that they can have some buy-in and to make sure that it is put in action, put through the legislative process and made into law of the land. And we have to, you know, we had people in this country who had so much more to lose than we do, and they did so much more than we are doing. And it's so disappointing that young people, even friends of mine, even young people I know, like I said before, we have complained and we complain and we complain until we're blue in the face, but we're not getting up and doing anything to make that change. Or we see another young person doing something, and we say, "Yeah, buddy, go ahead, you're doing great." But when are you gonna engage him and say, "Okay, this is something you believe, I can stand with you and I can help you with this fight." So we're gonna stand together, and I'm pretty sure there's overlap between all four of us here to make things happen. So if we believe in something, let's do it. Let's get rid of the party affiliations and get to the root causes of what we are facing in this country, and let's get it done. I think that's the main thing to galvanize young people in this country is action, action, action. Policy, not gimmicks, not games. We are living in in a country in a world where the future is uncertain. So people don't want games. They don't want gimmicks. They want real, tangible solutions to the issues that they're facing.
Right. Now, Taj, what do you think is the root of this disillusion that young people are experiencing in terms of engaging with politics?
I can't speak for all young people. I can speak for the young people I speak to, and I've talked about it a lot in my writing. I think a lot of it has to do with the quality of the candidates. I think that is a huge issue. Um, that is just not inspiring young people. I think the age of many of the candidates as well, most of them being older people, um, and the PLP being the only party, as I'm aware, that has a functioning youth wing, um, that is substantial and has an executive of its own, etc. The PLP is the only party I know that has that. Um, and and I'll give you a perfect example of why young people don't feel engaged. And I'm sorry, Sophia, but I'm going to use the OBA. I just went on their website and I looked at the platform that they have on their website, and I did a keyword search for youth. Youth is not mentioned not once. Young people is only mentioned once in the entire platform on the website. So I think that speaks to the issue as to why young people don't feel engaged. Because you do a keyword search, for young people, for young Bermudians, it comes up once. The OBA talks about having an independent education authority. They say that they want to have teachers, principals, and businesses. Nowhere in there do they say that young people should be involved in deciding what their education looks like. So you wonder why young people aren't engaged? They aren't given the opportunities to be engaged. We have to create our own opportunities to be engaged, as we all here have done. We all have created our own opportunities. But long gone are the days of youth parliament, RJ, where
Yeah.
MPs came to youth parliament and engaged with us, both OBA, both PLP. I must say the OBA engaged more than the PLP did. That's the truth. So long gone are those days. When do you see MPs or parties actively trying to create policies that will affect young people and the issues they care about? A perfect example is the abortion issue. Bermuda Youth Connect had an event about abortion 3 years ago, 3 years ago, and raised this as a core issue. Did the PLP respond then? No. Many people in the PLP that I spoke to felt that it was a non-issue. But now, all of a sudden, that an election is approaching and it's a global issue in the United States, it now matters. But when our young people say it's an issue, the party that was the government didn't listen. So that's my question, right? How do you expect young people to be engaged if you're not engaging them, if you're not encouraging them to be engaged, if you're not mentoring them, if you're not having policies that directly mention them, if you're not talking about turning Bermuda College into a four-year institution so Bermudians do not have to go abroad to get education? No government is talking about that. If you're not talking about the FDM is, yes, you're right. The OBA and the PLP aren't talking about that. If you're not talking about the FDM is the only party talking about giving votes for students living away. Most students have to go away to get an education. The PLP has been the government with a significant majority for the last 7 years. They could have easily made that happen if it was in their will. But why wouldn't they do it? Because they know that many young people wouldn't vote in their favor. So it's not politically prudent. So good policy is being sacrificed for political will or political maneuvering, which is so unfortunate in a small country like Bermuda, a small jurisdiction like Bermuda. Um, and another issue that we all like to skate around in politics is sovereignty or independence. That's the issue that I talk to a lot of young people about frequently, and no party is mentioning it. Everyone wants to skate around it as if they're afraid. I know a lot of older Bermudians, when they hear that word, and it's probably strategic for that reason, that when they hear the word independence, they automatically shut their brain off, and they think that Bermuda shouldn't go that route. But a lot of young people want to have that conversation. But parties aren't taking the bold step to say, let's have that conversation. Let's bring up the report from 2004, that was conducted by the Independent Commission on Independence. Let's bring up that report. Let's revitalize that conversation. That's an important issue in the 21st century. Those are the key issues. And the missing from the OBA's platform, and I can probably bet you they'll be missing from the PLP's platform. The FDM is the only party that has addressed some of those issues. So you're wondering why young people ain't voting? That's why.
And it's these very issues that are holding us back on the international stage. But Omar, I would like to bring you in. Like, what is the FDM currently doing to engage young people?
I mean, I wanna say this. We are, I mean, take me, out of everybody in the room on the political scene, I'm probably the newest. Yes, no, maybe, right? But my political education has been thorough, right? I am well trained, I am well read, I am well written. This is not a mistake, you know. We do have a youth academy that I have taken and I'm currently taking part in, and that youth academy will be rolled out to many other people, and it's open to many other people, right? And when we talk about like a C36, ton of potential, no political education, right? When we look at Shamari, ton of education, but will he be put on the scene? So I want to see, and I keep focusing on Shamari because for me, he is enabling the system that is not changing, right? I don't know if that made sense, but for people like him, for people like I keep calling out Mr. Parent Chief, the CEO of the credit union, big up to him. Those are the individuals who are under the Progressive Labor Party wing. I consider them to be under that wing. That when they start to step out, the PLP loses everything they have going for them in the future. And right now, they don't deserve people like Shamari. They don't deserve people like, you know, Mr. Parent Chief, that I call him because he is the CEO. I give him enough respect. So that needs to happen, right? Me, I'm on my own, i.e. in the FDM, new party, right? That takes a lot. That takes bravery. Sophia, one of the youngest candidates on the island, that takes bravery, right? This is what we want to see from PLP progressives, youth minds, or sorry, the youth wing, because under your current umbrella, not even your MPs have a say. 30 or 29 MPs, maybe 6 have said something in the last 2 years. It's unacceptable. And to continue under this umbrella, it reinforces that you're okay with it. You know what I mean? So this is what I'm asking. I'm calling you out purposely, not for disrespect, because I respect you and I recognize that for us to grow, I need people like you, Shamari, to say enough is enough. You know, if I know you want to be a candidate, right? If you're not selected, then you go in somewhere else where you will be selected, i.e. Malachi. You know, he went where he was needed, or he went where he was desired. He went where he was wanted, right? I respect that. Right? Malachi and I have a great relationship. His OBA, Mr. Parent Chief, great relationship. His PLP, Mr. Duane, great relationship. His OBA, C36, I'm looking forward to developing a relationship with him because I see that he can be a lot. But this is, again, I don't know if I answered your question. I really go on tangents, but it's a lot that needs to be unpacked. And power comes from organization. If you are in an organization that's not serving your interests, go take that power somewhere else. Organized. EVP Newton, yeah?
Shamari, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. First and foremost, to Arj, if you go to plp.pm, self_governance, is a whole report about independence there. Whole report, so you can go and look at that, and all of your candidates, because I'm a staunch believer in independence. And matter of fact, if we can get much further than that, we talk about independence and being an independent country when it comes to our energy sector and things like that. But I'll digress. Omar, we are making a lot of progress as the progressive minds in the PLP. Um, one thing about me is I know a little thing about politics. I know a little thing about this whole little game that they like to say it is, but it's not a game to me because Bermudian people need people like you said, like myself, like Ryan, who are who are staunch. How can we put it? We are people who want to see the best in our country. We are people who want to see the best of our communities. I have a good impact in the PLP. I mean, I don't know about what's going on in the FPM or any other party, but nobody could tell me what to do. Nobody has any reign over me, tell me where I can go. Now, do I want to be a candidate? I'm still thinking about it. Maybe I'll be a candidate in the next election, prior to the one that's coming up. Maybe I'll do something in another capacity. But when I'm ready, I'll be ready, and trust me, I'll be there and I'll be canvassing, and trust me, everybody would see me doing my work. But furthermore, look, we had we have people in the PLP who disagree. Hence, Curtis Dickinson and Scott Simmons. Curtis Dickinson and Scott Simmons, who went against the pension bill the other day. I mean, it's it's. Sorry, I think someone can hear me.
Yeah.
It's a. Okay, let me take my reports.
All right, well, I'll hand it over to Taj. What are your thoughts on the discourse so far?
I think this is good. I think this is vital, and I appreciate these types of conversations. Ever since the reason I started writing, I'll give some background. The reason I started writing my pieces is because I had nowhere and no one that would listen to my ideas, and I have ideas as to why people wouldn't listen, rather it be because I'm queer. I think that certainly plays a factor, and we cannot ignore that factor. That my voice is less respected because of that in Bermuda. 100%. People don't even think that have any value. A lot of Bermudians think that. And a lot of Bermudians only started to read my writing when it started to become political, even though my writing about the LGBTQ plus community is just as vital because it talked about things like equity. My writing talked about things like social justice, which are things that are vital, but people don't care because they have personal views about my identities or whatever. So that's the real reason I started writing was one to show people that queer people have value as well beyond just the LGBTQ plus community in Bermuda, and also to show people that young people can speak up. I mean, I must say I was inspired by Ryan. I'm glad to be able to call Ryan a friend of mine. He started writing probably first, I think. In Bermuda, he used to have columns a while ago, maybe five years ago now. And so he inspired me to start writing, and I started writing, and I will continue to write, being critical of all governments, being critical of all parties, being critical of all ideologies, speaking on issues that I think are important. And I think this type of discourse is very, very vital. And I am always offering the opportunity to engage. My email is there. My Instagram is there. You think anyone from any party has reached out to me to have a conversation? No. The answer is flatly no. Not even what people would consider my own party, not even my own MP has reached out to say, hey, how do we bring you back in the circle? How do we have a conversation with you? And no other party has reached out either. A lot of independent people have reached out. A lot of academics have reached out, but no one else has reached out to me. Instead, we have the chairman of the FDM calling me a pothead or whatever he called me, an empty head or whatever he called me on Twitter. So like just for bringing up a conversation, just for critiquing the FDM's ideology as I see it, which is a fair debate, and it wasn't personal at all. It was a critique on ideology, and then the chair of the FDM chose to make it personal. So that's why I think these conversations are vital, because I think we've demonstrated that we can be civil as young people, and that we can be civil and discuss politics civilly. I have friends across all political spectrums. I have friends that are PLP. I have friends that are, most of my friends probably OBA independent FDM. So I have friends across all the political aisles, and we can engage in conversation and discourse all the time. And I think that type of conversation is vital, not just amongst young people, but also amongst the chairs of the parties. They need to get on a panel and have a conversation about the direction of their parties. The chairs of the youth wing of the parties need to get in a room and have a conversation. The leaders of the parties need to get in a room and have a conversation. The deputy leaders of the party need to get in a room and have a conversation that's civil and policy-based and idea-based and ideologically based, just like this conversation. So that's why I think these conversations are vital, and I really take my hat off to Bermuda Youth Connect to doing something that no one else could do before. Quite frankly, no one else did it before, no one else could do it before, and Bermuda Youth Connect has really bridged that connect and made that connect between young people and politics, and I think that's vital, and I think that's commendable, and I think, one, Bermuda Youth Connect deserves more respect from the government in terms of the way they engage with Bermuda Youth Connect. I think that's a big issue that I have a big gripe with. And I think that in general, Bermuda society needs to give more respect to the work of these brilliant young ladies who are brilliant and studying brilliant things and doing brilliant things for our society. So that's what I'll say on that.
Yeah. And what I will like to say, because I haven't been able to put my 2 cents in, is that one thing that I am tired of being in this space as a young person is always having to be the status quo and set the standard that should be on the onus of the government. You know, we're the ones that are always extending an olive branch in terms of having these kinds of discourses. And I would love to see it turn around where they come to us and say, okay, an election is called, we're ready. You know, I would like to see that happen next year when an election is called. But I would like to hand it over to Sophia because, as a young person, I'm sure you probably have some shared experiences like Taj in terms of being vocal, being a young person, and probably feeling ridiculed based on what you do in the community.
Ridiculed? I'm so sorry. It's like cutting off a bit.
All right. I will hand it over to Omar just in the meantime because I know that you are eager to say something.
Itching to say something. So just really quickly for Taj, I actually responded to one of your op-eds directly. I don't know if you got a chance to read it, right? But I wrote a direct response. I don't know if you caught that. So to me, that is discourse. And I was looking for a reply. You know, maybe my response kind of set the table for the meal to be finished. And RJ, I've had this conversation with you as well. Power is taken, right? Bermuda Youth Connect is not going to be given respect. You take it, you cultivate it, you force it, you create your own policies and your own stance to ensure that the government is forced to pay attention, because every young person is going to vote in the direction of Bermuda Youth Connect. So, you know, I'm looking forward to you guys taking what you have now and really creating something that is much more powerful than it is now. But it's obvious that Bermuda Youth Connect has the power to set the tone and create change in Bermuda. So that's all I wanted to add.
All right. I would like to bring Shamari back in just to finish your original point.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I don't even remember my original point, but I think at the end of the day, look, you know, we as the Progressive Minds, you know, we have built a coalition that has forced the party in directions that we wanted to go in. Like I said earlier, the good thing about being young is you get to push the party with your energy in the direction that you wanted to go, in the direction that you believe that is best for the Bermudian people throughout the future of your life. Because You're a young person. You're going to have to deal with the decisions, whether it's UBA or PLP or FTM, whichever one is in government. You're going to have to deal with those decisions. So, look, the PLP youth wing has always been more radical than the mainstream Progressive Labour Party. And we've always made sure that we can not just filter into the party, but also make sure that we are effectively pushing the party in the direction that we want to go, and making sure that we are keeping that party true to its core values that they had way back in 1968. So we stand up for things that on 63. Sorry, I'm thinking of the first election, 1968, when it was first founded, and making sure that we are truly progressive and a truly Labour Party. So that's the things that we try to push the party towards. Now, do we always win? No, we don't always win, but most of the time we are able to make inroads within the party. Now, if you look at the other political parties, do I agree with everything in the ideology? No, I don't. Do I agree with everything that the OBA says? No, I don't. There are some overlaps, and we can work with that. And I think that Sophia and Omar and myself are making good, and Taj are making good um, points about making sure that the ends justify the means, making sure that when we're doing something, whether we're building a coalition to support a particular legislation, a bipartisan coalition, that we're making sure that we're doing the thing that we wanted to do. If we want universal health care, I know that Umar said he don't subscribe to that, but if me, Taj, and Sophia agree with it, and we are the parliament, us four, me, Taj, and Sophia might be in different parties, but we're going to join a coalition to make sure that we get the policies and legislation through that we believe in. So that's what I want to see. I want to see people making sure that, look, I don't need the fame, I don't need the credit, but I need it to get done, and that's what I want to see. I want things to get done, and I want things to get done to improve the lives of the Bermudian people. And I think Sophia agrees with that. I think Taj agrees with that. I agree with it, and I know Umar agrees with it. So if we all agree on one thing, let's just get it done instead of worrying about other things. We saw in the parliament the other day, the Scott Simmons didn't agree with it. Nobody talks about Scott Simmons didn't agree with the pension thing because it don't fit the narrative with Chris Ferber. Curtis Dickinson, because he challenged the premier, everybody wants to hype him up, but nobody talks about Scott Simmons. He didn't agree with it and he didn't vote for it. Nobody was talking about him not voting for it because it don't fit the narrative that we have to go against the PLP. Or look, I didn't agree with everything about the policy. We as a country, we as a people, we as a human race, we can make changes and we can make gains by forgetting all the barriers and making sure the ends justify the means, making sure whatever we're doing or whatever policy we're doing, we're building a coalition that supports it. We're uniting ourselves and we're making sure that we as a community are putting the best things forward for our people, regardless of party lines, regardless of all of that. We have an obligation, like I said before, to improve people's material conditions as young people in the political process. Even as the youth wing chair, I agree with that point that we need to, as a youth wing, push the party in the direction that we have a lot of young people that come into our meetings and are engaging and they're leaving there wanting to come back, wanting to become members of the Progressive Labour Party. And you know why that is? Because we are consistent. We are speaking to the issues that are relevant in our community. And we are ensuring that no matter what anybody in the PLP says or the OBA or in the public says, we are ensuring that we stay true to our core values. And I know Omar and believes that, people in the PLP can't speak out and things like that. We can speak out. I'm speaking out right now. I've said things that probably people in the PLP would disagree with when I talked about same-sex marriage. You think I'm going to get punished? Someone's going to give me licks? No, of course. I'm going to go out. I probably see the party members and they're going to speak to me and we're going to carry on because it's not that big of a deal. We disagree on policy. Sometimes we disagree on strategy. And that's the worst thing because when you disagree on strategy and you're fighting over how to get things done, somebody thinks we should go left. Somebody thinks we go right, get to the same place. So I think that we all should start to take ourselves out of it and put the people front of mind. Because if we're passing legislation that is best for the Bermudian people, who cares who's the government? who voted for it because they believed it's the best policy. That's what we should be looking at.
Sophia, I would like to bring you back into the conversation if you would like to respond to what Shamari just said, but also speaking to your experience as a young candidate.
Sure. I definitely agree with you, Shamari. Like I said before, I think bipartisanship is so important. So I'm glad that we have this group of young people who are involved in politics and genuinely want a lot of the same things. I feel like we have more similarities than differences, I think. So far as being a young person in politics, I would say it's the usual contrarians and like commentators like on like Royal Gazette comments or boards, social media. But otherwise, I've been very encouraged, I have to say, within my party and also just in the public in general, even by, typical like, or people who just don't typically vote for OBA, even they've been very supportive of me as a young person. So I really appreciate that. I think generally the public want newer, fresher faces and people who aren't like affiliated with like the legacies of either party, either way. So I think people are excited to get some fresh blood. But yes.
I think so too. And the results are in. So with 162 votes, the PLP has won this seat. Followed up with the FDM with 108 votes, the Independent with 95 votes, and the OBA with 91. With this sinking in, Shamari, what are your thoughts?
Congratulations to Dr. Reverend Emily Gail Deal. Congratulations to Mark Bean. Congratulations to Syrie Bean. Congratulations to Carl Neblett. It is a grueling process to put yourself forward as a candidate. So I want to first and foremost just give congratulations to the candidates. I want to congratulate the people of Sands North for going through this process and finding their candidate. 456 total votes. I would like to see a higher voter turnout. I think that this is a good victory for the Progressive Labor Party. It sets the tone going into the next general election. The OBA is the most shocking, not shocking, but I think they will be the most concerned seeing their candidate come fourth. And just like Sophia said about the by-election in C10, I think that a lot of people would look at that and it will, bring question marks. But I think that we can go to the point that Taj made about making sure that we get, Taj and I forget his name, but the other gentleman that was in the panel, ranked choice voting. How would the result have fared if we had ranked choice voting? If we had, an electoral system that was a little different. But I think that this is a vote. This is a win for the PLP, but it should not be something that we celebrate. We need to get to work. We need to ensure that coming up to the next election, we are. To be honest, I think that it is a position right now where all parties, especially the FDM, are going to have to go back to the drawing board because even that is a pretty good big margin between the Senate, the Reverend Emily Gail Deal and Mark Bean. But I think that the biggest concern, if I was a member of the OBA, I would be really concerned about the performance of Carl Neblett. But overall, I think it's a good win for Emily Gail Deal. I think Mark Bean will be disappointed as a party leader of the FDM not being able to take this seat. But overall, I think that Emily Gail Deal got the base out enough to take this election, and she must do the work to ensure that she can keep it when the general election comes in whenever the doors come in due time.
Sophia, how would you like to respond?
I think those are all fair points. Of course, I'm disappointed. It's not the margin we were expecting, if anything. So I think that also something we have to take to a drawing board and sort of consider and really analyze these results. That's that.
Omar, how do you feel about the results?
I feel, I mean, I really want to focus on my party as much as possible to kind of avoid speaking about other candidates. But I would say this is the generally expected result. As I mentioned, I think Cyril done a really good job when the polls closed. We had him in front of the OBA candidate as well. Like also would like to say that on the doorstep, we really thought we was going to be able to pull it off. But as Shamari mentioned, people just didn't show up, right? So yeah, I mean, that's how the cookie crumbles, and some interesting demographic things to consider, i.e. the youth vote, quote unquote, or even the middle-aged vote. Again, from being out, I would say the turnout, and this might be proven wrong, the turnout seemed to favor the PLP from a elderly voter point of view. Somebody mentioned earlier, the candidate didn't attend certain media events. They didn't have to, right? They have a base of what we call staunch PLP supporters that don't really care who you put out, right? That don't really care what the policy is. That don't really care what the direction of the island's going. That is just the reality of where we're at. You know what I mean? So congratulations. And I think we all should take this as a great step for democracy and choice, but also recognizing that with that choice, sometimes these are the things that happen.
Tosh, I'm going to bring you into the conversation. What are your thoughts?
I think I'm going to be a Debbie Downer here. Dr. Emily Gail Deal won this seat with 13.5% of the total vote share. There are 1,200 registered voters in constituency 36. 456 showed up. Emily Gail Deal won with 162, which is 13.5% of 1,200. Do we want, that's the larger question to me. Forget the politics, forget the political strategy. Do we want a country in which a candidate can win a seat without even having 50%, 30%, 20%, 15% of the vote share? How can they equitably say they're representing the constituency if they don't even have the majority of the constituency voting for them? So to me, this is not even a win for anybody, because a win to me means you've won, and that you've galvanized voters, and you've gotten people out, and you've gotten a significant share of the vote. To win with 13.5% of the vote as the current government, that's a sign to the PLP that things aren't going well. Yes, they may have won because this is a PLP strong hold. But I think, as Sophia rightly mentioned earlier, the PLP performed the worst in the OBA, in the by-election in Smiths North, in constituency 10. So I think what we're going to see across the general election is a similar trend. So I think what we're going to see is in traditional OBA seats, the PLP candidate will be last, and in traditional PLP seats, the OBA candidate will be last, with the independents and the FDM gaining votes and gaining popularity. So I think that is the crucial part that I think we're not discussing, is how can a candidate be sure that they represent the constituency if they only have 13.5% of the vote? To me, I wouldn't even feel confident to represent a constituency when I have 13.5% of the vote. That's laughable, actually, in my opinion. But hey, that's politics. People didn't come out to vote. Hopefully in the general election, more people vote, and hopefully the PLP or whichever party is able to increase their vote share to at least 30%, so they have a representative of the constituency instead of 13.5%.
Okay, that is such an important point. Now we're going to try and transition to a live feed of the polling station. Please bear with us. There may be a few technical difficulties.
There are individuals that did not vote for me, a high percentage, of course, with a 4-horse race. But what I did find were that the people in this constituency are ready to move forward. They want good representation, and I intend to be there for them.
All right. Thank you. That's all that matters. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Woo! Thank you so much. Okay.
Before everybody excuse me.
She said, I don't think I'm going to do this. I said, yes, you are. Yes, Lord.
Thank you so much. Oh, come on, get the baby out of the rain.
Let's make space for the baby. Gail.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Test. Really? Thoughts on the results? Well, congratulations to Dr. Deal. She won by, I think, about 50 votes in a close contest. And so she deserved it. And we have to accept the wishes and desires of the electorate. And that's what we have to do, period. And so on our part, we will do what we can to redouble our efforts and prepare for the next general election. That's going to be our focus.
Might bring you with the four-horse race. You actually lost a little bit of the percentage of the vote that you had back in 2020. Obviously, it's a by-election. What do you think your main challenge is?
The main challenge and requirement going forward is for the opposition parties, whether it's the FDM, the Independents, or the One Bermuda Alliance, to put our egos aside and work on a cohesive strategy so we don't cannibalize one another's votes. Because when you can win an election with 35% of the votes, it's not an indictment towards the winner, it's an indictment towards us because 65% of the voters voted for one of the opposition parties. And so that shows that going forward, this construct that we're working with now is not tenable unless it's to the benefit of the governing party. And so from a strategic perspective, you can expect, I wouldn't be surprised if the premier, looking at this result, would seriously consider going to a January election right now. Any tactician would think, well, that's the opportune time, unless the opposition parties get ourselves together and work in unison. And that's what's required going forward.
That's quite a comment you're making there, the opposition parties working in unison.
Yeah.
Could you expand on that?
Well, we got to sit down and have discussions. If we don't, then you can expect the PLP to be in government for the next 10 to 15 years. That might sound good to those who are celebrating now, but that's not a good situation for this country. And so we have to accept that reality. But it's not for the PLP to do anything different. It's for us to adjust as the other opposition parties. Okay. Let me finish. Sorry.
Do you think tonight's do you think the FDM is perhaps in a position to be the official opposition?
Well, I would say this, that we have the skill sets where we can be a strength to an opposition. Okay, and so yeah, if we're able to sit down and have discussions and figure out a way in which we can operate in unison, then the FDM is more than willing and able to take the lead in the areas in which we can add their strengths.
Have you already discussed the possibility of having discussions with the OBA and the independents? Or is this something that you just come up with tonight?
It's come up with tonight because the results we're responding to the results where the winner won with 35% of the vote. And so it's incumbent upon us to accept that result and read the tea leaves. And by reading the tea leaves, we have to accept the fact that 35% will be what the PLP will be in going forward, right, for the foreseeable future, unless we can come in a unified or make a unified effort. And that way it's no longer going to be a minority victory, because that's what happened. The majority of the population in 36 voted for an entity that's not PLP, but the PLP is won the seat. Again, that's congratulations to the PLP, but this is a new scenario that we're grappling with today. The last by-election you had 3, now we have 4. The result was the same. Well, it actually wasn't the same. The OBA won, right? But this time the PLP won. And the question is that good for Bermuda? Okay, clearly 65% of the people in 36 don't think that way, but yet we didn't win. Okay, the PLP won. So we have to go within, we have to humble, we have to put the egos aside. Okay, seriously, put the egos aside and figure out the best way forward in which we can mount a challenge towards the PLP. As simple as that.
Would that involve possibly a merger or some sort of tactic where perhaps the FDM doesn't stand in certain seats and the OBA doesn't stand in?
It would be premature on my part to say that or to speculate. But we do need to sit down and have discussions and figure out a way what's the best approach forward to win the next general election. Simple as that. Voter registration? Yeah. 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 Well, first off, we accept that we lost fair and square, right? But we did experience a lot of anomalies in this process, both at the polling station and before the polling station. When I say we, I'm speaking on behalf of the various opposition entities. And that's something that we have to look at seriously. If not, I could see in the foreseeable future that we're going to have election observers. That's how serious a matter it is. We will have to have election observers in future elections if we don't address some of the issues that we have seen over the last few weeks. Any more questions? No? Thank you very much. Okay.
Evening, everybody.
Yep. Thank you very much. So, thank you, Tom, representing for the OBA. This, you did manage to increase the percentage of the OBA's vote, something like 4%, but still last place for the OBA. Mm-hmm. Talk about the challenge where clearly in this constituency, the OBA is not finding its foothold.
This team worked incredibly hard. We've had a team on the ground now for quite some time. We've had a lot of people working very hard to get to speak to the community, to work with the community, to learn from the community. It's been an incredible effort on the part of a lot of different people. And Carl has worked incredibly hard, taking time off work and canvassing just all over the place. So I tell you what, I'm just so very happy for all of that incredible effort. Thank you, Carl, because he's taken the mission of the OBA and the purpose of the OBA into the community and explaining that actually we're here to serve. That's our actual purpose, is to be of service. And so that's what we put forward. The electorate spoke. We congratulate the candidates who got the vote counts that they did. And we're looking forward to our postmortem and looking into these numbers and seeing what we can do different.
So let's talk about, you said put the work in, but the work hasn't borne certain fruits clearly today. But putting that aside, we've had something of an offer to go to sit at the table suggested here tonight by Mark being the leader of the FDM.
Yeah.
Has that come up already, or are you prepared to be having that discussion?
Look, the OBA is here to strengthen the community, enforce integrity in politics, and put responsible spending in place. That doesn't mean that we have to do it by ourselves. That doesn't mean, that only means that that's what we're here for. So if there's a conversation to be had, we're open to any conversation. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Pardon? I feel encouraged. I feel it's been an amazing experience. I'm 26 years of age, roughly 5 weeks in the political realm. I gave it a shot, and I'll be here. I'll be around, and I'll be back. So I'm loving it. I can't complain. I wouldn't even just go to canvassing. I'll just continue doing what I've been doing for the past 8 years of my life and just stay engaged with the community, be a strong representation of the community, and, not rely on false promises, but real actions.
For you to step in as a political unknown, come in and take 20% of the vote, come essentially in third place, that is quite striking. What do you think a key of your campaign is that has brought people to you? Is it just the fact that you are a born and bred C36 kid, or is there more to it than that?
I honestly think that when we're in the homes, it's that engagement, the personal exchange that goes on, the level of empathy, the level of transparency that was displayed during the canvassing. I believe that people really felt like they were heard, and they also felt that they had somebody that will go in their corner and represent them, and not represent a party. So I feel that it's just individuals recognizing a breath of fresh air for a change.
And finally, I would ask you the same thing. You've had the Mark being leader of the FDM, who essentially came in second place in this race, speaking to the other oppositions, which now in this case, you're one of them, and saying maybe we should come to the table.
Well, I do agree in his words, but I have to word it differently. I just don't look at any of the individuals who's ran as opposition. I'm a firm believer in that the opposition are the problems that our country is facing at this current moment. So I feel that if you're an individual who's running, then you're a part of the solution. You're trying to solve the problem. So regardless of the outcome, regardless of the party, we should all still work together in order to create a better Bermuda.
It's been, that all sounds very noble, but the fact is, under our current political system, it's winner takes all, and everybody else is the opposition. I mean,
Yeah.
How do you suggest we bring about more collaboration between political parties?
Simple answer: by collaborating. It's that simple. In the sense of it isn't easy, but it's pretty simple. Let's be real right now. Bermuda is in the current state which we need as much help, as much collaboration, as much forward thinkers as possible right now. Us keeping ideas that will bring our country forward to ourselves or to a particular political party is getting Bermuda nowhere. So we must move forward. We must collaborate. We must come together at the end of the day.
The OBA in its platform this week said that it intended to carry out a review of the Westminster system and with possible changes. Is that something that you back?
I do back. Well, I've been reviewing the Westminster system as well myself, but I do feel that right now it is time for change. It is time to evolve. We are now in the year 2024. I think that there needs to be a relook at how we do things as a government. Thank you very much.
All right, Sari, well done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right,
Have a great one. Yes, I.
Good.
All right. Well, constituency 36 has spoken. Your constituency representative from the PLP is Reverend Dr. Emily Gail Dill. I would like to thank all of the panelists who shared their insights throughout the whole entire night and engaged with us through this long voting process. I would like to thank Burn News for providing a much needed platform for this panel to be facilitated. And I would like to thank you for tuning in. And I hope everyone has a good evening.